welcome back to Vlogmas. Today we will talk about books. So we are going through all the books I've read this year. I'm trying to quickly summarize them, give my thoughts, give my rating. I mostly read on my Kindle. I also try to borrow from the library as much as I can to save some money. I also have some physical copies of the books. Here they are. I use Goodreads to track my reading, a super old app that is never updated and sucks, but I still love it. I had a reading goal of 40 books this year. I read 40 books 2023 and 2022, so I was like, let's get it again. This year though, I didn't read as much. I was writing a lot in the summer, and for some reason I just can't write when I'm reading, and I can't read when I'm in the writing phase. So that means I might never actually finish the book I'm writing. I was also reading a lot of comics this summer. I read these witch comics when I was a kid. This was a huge thing back then, and I got obsessed with the idea of rereading these. So I hunted this down online. I got all of the comics pretty easily up to the number where I stopped as a kid, so I still haven't finished all of these, but I will probably read more in the Christmas holidays. So a few weeks ago I lowered my reading goal to 35 books because I was getting upset when I looked at my Goodreads and saw how many books I was behind all the time. I don't know if I can get to 35 either. I'm at 32 now, and we'll see how many I can go through. During the Christmas holidays, I'm really trying to focus on reading, putting my phone away. I'm going to delete all social media and really be just present. Before we start with the books I have read this year, a few books that I'm currently reading are Introduction to Animal Philosophy. It's a Finnish book. Obviously, as you can tell, it's a collection of essays of animal philosophy. I started this last year, and I've been reading this really slowly because it's quite intense, and I usually read before I go to bed, and I don't want to read about violence against animals before I go to sleep. So maybe I should read this during the day. A few weeks ago I started Kalevala, which is an epic Finnish poetry. I don't think I'm going to finish this anytime soon, but it's a very good book to read before going to bed because I usually fall asleep when I read it. That said, let's start with the actual books. Let's go with the order that I have read the books. So, the first one is Snowed In by Catherine Walsh. This is a romance book, and I have a weird relationship with romance books. I would love to love them, and I always end up hating them. To be honest, I can't remember much of this book. What I can say is that I always prefer to read romance books by UK or Irish authors. This author is Irish because their humor just clicks so much better with me. Like I actually find it funny basically compared to American authors. Sorry. In this book, old friends from school bump into each other when they are visiting family for Christmas, and they are both single and their family is taking pity on them because of that. So they decide to fake date. Fake dating as a trope, not maybe my favorite. I can enjoy it. It's pretty light and fluffy, obviously. This book has believable characters and quite realistic dialogue, which I liked. But again, with romance books, it just falls flat in the end. Everything is so predictable and too fluffy. I can't digest lovey-dovey fluffy stuff when they are just swooning over each other, and it's all tell not show. 3 out of 5. You can read it during Christmas and just not take it too seriously. Next, I read Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This is a sequel to Ninth House, which I really enjoyed last year. It's an urban fantasy. Basically, at Yale University there are secret societies that deal with magic, and our main character Alex Stern can see ghosts. It's very dark, but the book, in my opinion, suffers from like too many high points, and there's not that delicious tension that builds towards the end, which I found a bit disappointing and like hectic. So I was a bit disappointed. I will probably still read the third one if it comes out anytime soon. I gave this 3 out of 5. Then I went through a very obsessive phase reading the Cruel Prince Trilogy by Holly Black. I go through these phases often, that I just get really into the book, even if it's not like exceptional, but I just find the story really immersive. When our main character Jude was a kid, her parents were murdered and she was kidnapped to the fairy world, and of course she's an outcast because she's a human, so she's bullied by these mean fairies. So Jude obviously trains hard to be a badass and like be as good as the fairies. And there is an enemies to lovers romance story that slowly builds up, which I love. I'm a sucker for enemies to lovers, especially if it actually is slow build and realistic. Is the writing exceptional? No. Are the main characters doing really stupid stuff that doesn't make any sense at some points? Yes. But did I love reading this? Absolutely. The whole trilogy I would rate 3-4 stars. Really quick read. Next is Bloody Rose by Nicholas Eames. This is the first book I read written by a man for a long time. I have my reasons why I don't really enjoy reading books written by men. Anyway, I saw this book in a bookstore and the cover is so amazing that I immediately went on my Kindle and bought it. I really wish I had bought the physical book because the book ended up being amazing. I didn't know anything about this book. I had never heard about this author. It is something so different. I feel like it's written in a very not so serious, a bit silly and deranged way. I was laughing all the time reading this book, which really doesn't happen often. It was super hilarious. It really reminded me of Walter Moyers' books, who is one of my favorite authors. I read about these books all the time. Also, the book reminded me of the game series Borderlands, which is also a bit like dark humor. The end of the book was a bit more serious. It felt like two different styles, which threw me a bit, but I still gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Then we take a dip in the rating because I tried romance again, and we all know how that goes. Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I have seen this romance book recommended a lot, especially for people who don't usually like romance, and I was like really getting my hopes up with this one, especially because I liked the beginning, but I should have known that that doesn't mean anything with romance books with me. The general theme of romance is obviously, you know from the start that these people are getting together and fall in love. And the predictability, I understand it's literally the genre's idea and the whole point, but for me, I just find it so boring because after the tension, everything goes to just dull, lovey-dovey stuff, as we have talked about. So I gave this 2 out of 5. Another obsessive phase of me reading 6 books of the series of the Shore Chronicles by Justin Fike. These are really short books, like 200 pages long, so you will read these very quickly. In the books, Charity, who is a thief among other things, is sentenced to 10 years of forced labor in this new colony full of magic and monsters. So Charity was the best part of this series. She is a very bitty, badass female lead, which we love, of course. And to survive in this new colony, she has to make friends, and she's not that good making friends. And I really love the trope found family with all my heart. However, this book is so full of promise, so full of potential, but it's just not explored enough. Like the dynamics between the different characters, I would have just wanted to find out more about them. I still really enjoyed reading these. I would say like 3 or 4 stars, and this really got me out of a reading slump, so that's all that matters. Then I read an old favorite from my teenage years. I saw this at a charity shop and I just couldn't not buy it. In English, this is Vanilla Syndrome by Tuija Lehtinen. I loved this book when I was like, I don't know, 11, 12, 13, around those years. Now I enjoyed it again and I was really shocked by that. The writing is just very accessible and quick to read and quite funny in this specific Finnish way of the 90s. Like, it's quite dry and strange. I love this again, but for different reasons than I did when I was younger, because I found this main character really problematic actually. She's like dieting and stuff, which is very toxic, but it's a coming of age story. 4 out of 5 honestly. Next, again, we embark on a new fantasy series that I'm really excited about because this series has 9 books. So I have something to look forward to. Basically, in this story, magic has returned to the normal world with a bang, and it has also brought back mythological creatures. But magic comes in waves, so when the magic is on, guns don't work, you can't drive a car, then magic suddenly turns off and you feel this kind of, you feel it physically, and then you can call again, you can use a laptop, etc. But even when magic is off, there are still shapeshifters and vampires navigated by necromancers roaming the streets. Very exciting setup, something I've never read before. Our main character, Kate Daniels, is a mercenary who is super badass, has a cool magic sword and everything, and has secret powers that we are finding out gradually. We are learning more about her in every book. She's very witty, can't keep her mouth shut when she should, gets into trouble. I love her with all my heart, feels like a friend to me now. I've read the first 2 books now, Magic Bites and Magic Burns, and I'm currently in the middle of Magic Strikes. So you can see there's a theme here. Forget the covers, forget they ever existed, forget you saw them, because this is the best urban fantasy I've ever read. These books are written by Ilona Andrews, which is actually a pseudonym for a wife and a husband combo. So they are writing these books together, which I found very interesting. It really works though. I would rate these so far 4 out of 5. Then I just couldn't help myself, because there is still going on this kind of Hunger Games renaissance. I was seeing Hunger Games everywhere. Obviously the new book came out and the new movie came out, and I saw the movie. I didn't read the book and I feel really bad about that, because it's my pet peeve if you have seen the movie and not read the book. So I reread The Hunger Games by Susan Collins. I loved these when they came out, and the first and last time I read them was when they came out over 10 years ago. I had forgotten a lot of stuff from these books, but they are a masterpiece. Do I even have to tell you that? And do I have to tell you what they're about? If you don't know, then where have you been all your life? It's just an extraordinary story written in this really simple but poignant way. The action is breathtaking. These short sentences pack such a punch that I was crying a lot. Tears were shed, for sure. I also got a lot more out of the political themes than I did over 10 years ago. It is a very important trilogy, and if you have seen the movies, the books are even better. Then I'm so excited, guys. So my favorite book of last year, and one of my favorite books of all time, Sung by Elina Pitkäkangas. This is a Finnish fantasy book taking place in an Asian-inspired world with a little bit of urban fantasy, so there's like a little bit technology, but there's this unique magic system and kind of kung fu fighting. A little bit of romance as well sprinkled in there, slow burn. So we got a sequel to this book, Naraka. So I reread Song this year so I could get all out of Naraka. And guys, these are getting translated into English, so you can read them. Like, the writing style in these books is not super artistic or poetic. It's the opposite. It's very simple, but it still gets the scenes across. Some scenes of these books are playing around in my head like a movie 24/7, because they are breathtaking, they are so memorable. But that is of course 5 out of 5 stars. I'm out of breath. Then we of course had to take a dip, because life is about balance. I read Ashes and the Starcurs King by Carissa Broadbent, which is a sequel to the romantasy The Serpent and the Wings of Night. Please tell me why all fantasy books are named like this in a very annoying way of something of something of something. I found the first book very entertaining, not necessarily like a masterpiece, but just a light quick read. There is this main character who's human, who lives in a vampire world. Then there's this magic tournament, and there's obviously a handsome vampire man, and then they get together. You know what happens. There is only one sentence I have written in my Goodreads review about this book, and it says, if I have to read "There she is" one more time, I will combust. And that is all you need to know. This book is 591 pages long, and I have no idea why I read it. I know I have promised time and time again that I will not read any more romance, but I was in India in September this year and I just wanted something comforting. So I read 6 More Months of June by Daisy Garrison. In this book, 2 old childhood friends who are the opposites. The girl is a nerd, the guy is the most popular guy. They finally understand that they're soulmates during senior year of college. This book really surprised me because it has realistic dialogue and it is fluffy, but it also has depth. Like, the characters actually have backstories and quite dark ones as well. And I was rooting for the characters, I really believed in them. so I gave this 4 out of 5. Then I read the Young Ellis Trilogy by Mary Lou. I started reading the first book in India. I had just found a cockroach on my pillow just when I was laying my head on the pillow to go to sleep. I had a breakdown and I couldn't sleep. So I started reading this book and it turned out to be amazing. In this world there has been a pandemic that has swept over the lands, and those who survived, those kids who survived, have gained magical powers. And they have also gained some marks on their faces. They have different colored hair or weird colored eyes, and they are like really despised. Our main character finds out she has the powers. She's actually very powerful when she's trained, obviously. This book really surprised me. It's very refreshingly different. The main character is very dark and not your usual hero. This story goes to very unpredictable directions, at least for me. I wasn't expecting it. This series also has one of my favorite villains. The villain is like the best written character in my opinion. And it is a fun ride. It is a dark ride, but a fun one. 4 out of 5. Continuing with fantasy, I read the Shepherd King Doy by Rachel Gillick. This is a super hyped romantasy book in TikTok, and I had my hopes up and I was oddly disappointed with this one. In this world, a magical mist has kind of taken over the land, and if you go to the mist you go insane. The magic system is based around magic cards, so these cards give you different powers like inhumane speed and strength or invisibility. Our main character has a secret. She's hiding something. There's a romance in this book and I was told it's slow burn, which I love, as I have said, but it's not slow burn. I don't know what kids these days think slow burn means, but it's not this. Also, this book had a lot of things that annoyed me, a lot of my pet peeves. Why in every fantasy book the main male character, the love interest, has grey eyes? How many people do you know have grey eyes? Why do they always have grey eyes, and why is it always mentioned in every sentence that they have grey eyes? Why do they always have calloused hands? In this book, when the male character was lifting something, it was described as he lifted the sword with calloused hands. He touched my hand with his calloused hand. Nobody cares. Is this a fetish or something? Like, leave me be with the calloused hands. I did still enjoy the story because it was like this unique setting, and I read the second book and I really enjoyed that one. So altogether I would rate these 3 or 4 stars out of 5. Next, oh my god, I'm so angry whenever I think about this book. Jade City by Fonda Lee. This is a super hyped urban fantasy that has won all the awards. I was promised fantasy, interesting politics, kung fu fighting. What I got was misogyny, men talking to men about really boring clan politics that I didn't care about at all. More misogyny, no magic, almost at all. There's like this much magic in this fantasy book. And the one thing that boils my blood to most about this is that this is written by a woman. Let's go to the next one. I'm so mad. If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is amazing. I have trouble going from the hatred of the Jade City to this book because I really love this one, but bear with me. I love this book, this dark academia. It's about these elitist, privileged theater students that take their place very seriously, and they go a bit deranged. There's murder involved and it is very engaging. The characters are interesting, the dynamics are very well written. There was rising tension, shivers down my spine, didn't want it to end ever. There's a fanfic that you have to read after finishing this book. I was reading this at like 2 AM at night. I will link it down below. 5 out of 5. Next is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I have a rule that I have to read 1 classic in a year. I don't enjoy reading classics, but I know I should read them once in a while to get the context. And especially because I enjoy reading dystopia, sci-fi and fantasy, I want to read the classics from those genres. I also don't like reading books about unlikable characters, and in this book I despised almost all the characters. There's only the only female character in this book that I liked, and it is a very important book to read. This really feels like it was written about the state of the world today, which is very scary. I struggle to rate this one. I don't know how to rate classics. Next I read The Ers Soul by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book I have read by Brandon Sanderson. I know I'm really late, but I have really tried to avoid his books. He has a million books and it feels very overwhelming. Also, he's a man and we know how I feel about man authors. But this was exceptional. Like, I get the hype now and I will definitely read more of his books now. This is only a novella and I didn't want this to end. The female main character is amazing. I loved her. She was also not sexualized in the slightest. I know the bar is very low for male authors, but it was a shocker for me still. The less you know about this book, again, I think is the best because it's very short. So really just go in this book knowing nothing. It's a fantasy book. It's an amazing fantasy book, I must say, and you will read it in one day easy. That concludes the books I have read so far. There are a few books this year that I DNF'd, so did not finish. I'm getting better at DNFing books because I used to always force myself through a book, but I have realized that life is too short to read mediocre books or like really bad books. I did still finish a few books this year that I should have DNF'd, like the Roses and the Songs and the Snakes and the King, the thing, you know what I mean. But that concludes my reading year of 2024. There's still a week left or more, so we will see what we can do with that time. Let me know in the comments what was your favorite book you read this year or the worst book you read this year. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you tomorrow. Bye guys.